The hearing you're about to see was never meant to reach the public. And once you understand why, you'll know why they tried to bury it. November 11th, 2024, a closed-door session at the top echelon of Costa Rica's government.
Interest of justice versus the President's Office and Ministry of Health. After the World Health Organization refused to handle the COVID-19 vaccine dispute and kicked it down to national authorities.
We brought heavyweight experts.
Dr. Mike Yeadon, former vice president of Pfizer and our chief scientist, with decades inside Big Pharma, who knows exactly how they cut corners.
Dr. Jancy Lindsay, molecular biologist and toxicologist, exposing how these injections act as experimental gene therapy and warning about dangerous DNA contamination like SV40. Sasha Latipova, a pharmaceutical industry insider who knows exactly how the system really works.
They ignored the evidence. They refused to act, so we sued. The Supreme Court ordered them to produce the proof.
Show the safety studies. Show that it's not experimental. Neither the World Health Organization nor the Ministry of Health could produce a single piece of proof. The World Health Organization defaulted, the ministry defaulted. No safety data, no indigenous data, nothing.
But one thing they did admit, these products are experimental. And in May 2025, we won. The WHO and the ministry were in legal default. This case pulled back the curtain on global corruption.
The World Health Organization borrowed unlawful U.S. Department of Defense authority. The FDA rubber-stamped it, then forced it worldwide. Not one step was lawful, not one step was legitimate. From the Department of Defense to the World Health Organization, every link in the chain was void. This is the hearing that started it. This is how we cornered them, and this is how we will expose the greatest medical fraud in history.
And starting now, we will be dropping a series, 5-minute truth bombs, each one exposing a piece of this case that connects directly to our FDA citizens petition, which seeks to relabel the mRNA injections as experimental gene therapy, regulate them accordingly, and take them off the global market.
It begins here with the hearing that you're about to see.
Follow, share, because the truth is coming.
Thank you. Okay, maybe I'll jump in next. My name is Dr. Mike Yeadon. I was a former pharmaceutical company executive. I was senior in Pfizer, but I've spent the last 4.5 years trying to help people understand issues that I could see with these so-called vaccines. So I've worked very hard, as have others, pro bono, and I hope with others, I will persuade you that we need to take a closer look at these products to save people's health. That's what I hope. Thank you for being here.
I'll go next. My name is Sasha Latipova, and I'm a former pharmaceutical research and executive, research and development executive, just like Dr. Yeadon. I worked in clinical trials area, and I ran several contract research organizations, which are companies that are involved in performing clinical trials and collecting data. And I also, as part of my job, very frequently interacted with FDA for the approval purposes for my clients, submitting data and discussing analysis in the context of drug approval. So I'm very familiar with how drugs are supposed to be approved in the US and internationally. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Hi, I'm Dr. Leisha Martin. I am a nanoscientist and biomedical engineer. I've been working on these type of nanoparticle drug and gene delivery vehicles for about 18 years. So I'm very familiar with their preclinical, clinical trials and their function.
There we go. I'm sorry. Hi, my name is Dr. Jancy Lindsay. For some reason, my name did not show up on Teams. Not really sure why, but I'm a toxicologist and a molecular biologist with over 30 years of experience. I do have vaccine development experience with a traditional vaccine that unfortunately didn't work, caused sterility. back at Baylor College of Medicine. I also have pulmonary toxicology experience, many years, national and international publications, and specialize in molecular biology, gene therapies, things like that. So.
Okay, thanks so much, everyone, and welcome again. Okay, well, as Braxil was stating at the early beginning of this meeting, even though we have received a lot of communications from your organization, we would like to focus in this particular meeting on the concerns you may have had regarding the participation of Dr. Munive at the WHO assembly back in May, specifically the linkage with the pandemic treaty and all the work that has been surrounded this document. So I will gladly give actually the floor back to you so you can present your concerns and we can talk a little bit about it.
Are you saying that you would like to talk about the treaty, or were you?
Yes, well, the instructions that we have from Dr. Munive was to talk about that particular subject, even though we know that you have sent several communications regarding different topics.
Okay, yes.
I suggest we first go over the concerns we had prepared and then leave as a final point that which you want to add.
Agreed.
If it's okay with you.
Agreed, because they're actually the same issues that we have for the pandemic treaty that the WHO won't listen to and referred back to. I think you probably got the referrals back from the WHO on the PCR and the vaccine, but all of these are in regards to that we are recognized as stakeholders in pandemic preparedness and response by the WHO. So we would like to assist in pandemic preparedness and response. Go ahead and read what we have here.
Dustin, if you like.
Thank you very much. My name is Dustin Bryce. Thank you so much to the distinguished people who have come today and honored representatives. It's a very pleasure to be with everyone here today. And I would like to start by recognizing our shared commitment in health. It's very important, including with the treaty, justice and cooperation and values that we're all working tirelessly to uphold in the extraordinary times that we're in. So I want to extend my deepest gratitude and to Adriana, as well as Health Minister Mary Mnuve, for your exceptional work during the WHA 77. You guys are super amazing. Your strength and leadership in helping Costa Rica break the consensus during the pandemic treaty to reject, and are testament to the commitment to serving the best interests of the people of Costa Rica and also the rest of the world on that matter. And the entire global community. So Adriana and Mary, your courage did not go unnoticed. Thank you so much. Basically, I wish to express that the privilege to work alongside everybody is very amazing, and that we're here today not to point fingers at anybody, but to extend a hand in partnership. We would like to make it clear that there are very complex issues that we should be able to work out together.
And to put it into context, the treaty gives the DG too much power to make these unilateral definitions, which would usurp our own legislation. So it actually conflicts with Article 3 of the IHR, and so they're actually violating their own IHR. And so go on and explain it.
I would just say that these are, by definition, gene therapies. I'm a molecular biologist. That means I have a PhD in studying gene therapy, DNA, RNA, and all things protein. Any nucleic acid sequence that you deliver to a cell that causes that cell to make something that it would otherwise not make is a gene therapy. They were described as gene therapies by the companies themselves, Pfizer and Moderna, in SEC filings. The head of Bayer's pharmaceutical region at a meeting in 2021 went on to say how wonderful it was that the pandemic had brought them the opportunity to bring gene therapies to the public. It was a privilege that they would have otherwise not had. So they are clearly gene therapies, and they have the same dangers that gene therapies have always had. They weren't brought to market for 40 years because of those problems, which are insertional mutagenesis, causing cancers and aberrant proteins, as well as immune responses, autoimmune reactions that can cause systemic organ damage, as well as this, mutating the gene pool of our children.
Dr. Yeadon had his hand up, so maybe if you want to go ahead. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Yes, so I mentioned at the outset I have had a long career in pharmaceutical R&D. I'm a research scientist. I led Pfizer's respiratory research for many years until 2011. And then 10 years as an independent. I was fortunate to be successful. I was started, developed, and sold a biotech company. So I think I'm a serious scientist. So when I say the next thing, I'm not joking, that the products that have been purported to us as vaccines, as you've heard Jancy and others say, they're not properly made, they're not properly described, they're not what they say they are. And the way it's very easy for me, I think, to explain that is to say it is formally impossible to go from the idea of a product like this to it being manufactured and rolled out and injected in people in under 1 year. It's formally impossible in the same way it would be impossible to make a brand new jet airliner with engines, avionics, testing in under a year. It wouldn't matter how much money you had, how many people you have. It's formally impossible because there are many linear steps that cannot be removed if you want to know that the product works, is safe, and is consistently made. So my contention, it's not a theory, it's not an opinion, it's certain. This is why I started being concerned in December 2020. I knew it was impossible for what we were told had happened to have happened. And so my mission was, what the hell had they actually done here? So sometimes my chemistry teacher would say, as an example, you can't make a baby in 1 month with 9 women. And it was meant to be politically incorrect, but this is a good example. You can't, I'm trying to communicate without making it too complicated, that what we are told these products are is formally impossible. So that means there is some chicanery going on. Now, I have too much to communicate in one very short interaction, so I'm just going to give you one piece of information, just like Jancy gave you 1 or 2. These materials are formulated, and that's normal. You wrap an active molecule in some kind of package to protect it. These are wrapped in lipid nanoparticles, often written as LNP. It's really a blob of grease, and it's meant to protect these materials. What I think is important for you to know, it's in the published literature, and it was in the published literature before this was chosen to protect the so-called vaccines. They accumulate in the ovaries of animals, and I believe in the ovaries of girls and women. So, and then when I tell you, we have not seen what's called reproductive toxicology testing done. So these materials, I think, are purporting to be vaccines, and they are not, as Jancy has said. I contend they could not, it's formally impossible for them to have been made properly in a year. And I've given you an example of bad design where they've been wrapped in a vehicle formulation, this LNP, which is proven in the literature to deposit their payload in the ovaries of females, both animals and humans. And then when you look in the actual package, and Sasha Latipova has done a rigorous job of this, you do not find reproductive toxicology properly done. And yet, we all know, politicians and others said, oh, these are fine, they're safe to be given to women, pregnant or otherwise. So that's all I'm going to say at this point. Unfortunately, there is so much more, but I hope that the fact that I'm still here nearly 5 years after starting pro bono work to do this at a total destruction of my personal reputation, but gathered around me colleagues with similar commitment, I hope that you will choose to work. I think the proposal was maybe some kind of a commission or investigation, so that there is a chance to lay in a calm, methodical way the information we have, so that the right decisions can be reached for the people of Costa Rica and elsewhere. So I'll stop there, and thank you for listening.
So can I
Yes, please go ahead.
Share a little bit. Yeah. So can I actually share one slide? It's basically, let me see, screen.
Okay, now we can see it.
All right. So for some reason I have. Okay, I'll just do it this way. So I mentioned my experiences in regulatory compliance specifically, and in conducting clinical trials and clinical programs. And I reviewed both Pfizer and Moderna preclinical testing packages, which they submitted to the FDA as part of the emergency use authorization or emergency use listing. And from my personal experience, I know how these products need to be tested for safety and toxicity in clinical and preclinical trials. And on this page, I'm showing a typical program that any drug or biologic will have to undergo through, and it consists of many studies. So under each box, there could be dozens of studies in each box. But these are three categories of testing that needs to be done: pharmacokinetics, or how the drug travels through the body, pharmacology, safety, efficacy, drug interactions, and safety. All these different categories of safety. And so when I reviewed Pfizer and Moderna animal studies, which were produced by Department of Health and Human Services based on FOIA lawsuits, this is what I found. None of these programs were tested. You can see majority of what a normal toxicology and safety pharmacology program would involve was not done at all. And from what was done, majority of it was done not in the actual products, not in Pfizer community and not in Moderna Spikevax, but with some other products which were previously tested and failed in clinical development. So other irrelevant products most of the time, and not in compliance with good laboratory practices, which are part of good manufacturing practices and part of US particularly approval law, and I'm sure it's the same in Costa Rica. So as you can see already, vast majority of what we expect to be done from safety and efficacy and toxicology testing was simply not done. And by the way, all of this was waived using WHO as an excuse. So this WHO pandemic treaty will further solidify all of this, kind of removal of safety and toxicology testing going forward for majority of these products. So that's why, WHO pandemic treaty would be detrimental for countries like Costa Rica for their, national programs of assessing drug regulatory compliance. So, and another point I wanted to make is, let me stop sharing. Another point I wanted to make is the Office of Controller who purchased these vaccines was defrauded, in my opinion, because the emergency use authorization law in the US preempts all the normal pharmaceutical safety and efficacy and good manufacturing practice testing, because it removes the enforcement of all the pharmaceutical law in case of announced public health emergency. So while this is the case in the US, what happens in Costa Rica, due to international mutual recognition agreements, now national regulators of pharmaceutical products in countries like Costa Rica or Europe or elsewhere go by what FDA says. So this mutual recognition just says FDA can perform this job and we will just take FDA's word for it. Now, what I'm telling you, FDA is using US law that says that for these products, there is no pharmaceutical law that applies. So that's how everyone gets deceived into following FDA, which is acting essentially under a US framework, which waives all these regulatory requirements. And I'm finishing up. And it also, the law explicitly says, the US law explicitly says that these products cannot be deemed adulterated or misbranded, regardless of what is found in these products. And we know that from actual testing, we found numerous examples of contamination with very dangerous substances, with heavy metals, with DNA, with plasmids that include SV40 promoter, which is a part of nucleic acid that is known to cause cancer. And so these things are found routinely, and FDA does not act because by US law, FDA is absolved from their responsibility of acting or enforcing this. How this was pushed on other countries is under this global emergency and panic and saying everybody's going to die unless you all shut up and just take this, right? And also the contracts that Costa Rica signed with Pfizer, Moderna, and other pharmaceutical clients, I know this for sure, were in these contracts, they signed up to waive all the national requirements for good manufacturing practice compliance and everything else under importation rules. So this is how all this law, the consumer safety protection law, was removed globally by this method, is by having mutual recognition agreements, following FDA, and then waiving all the national laws under contractual obligations with Pfizer and Moderna.
That's exactly.
Finally, many things that were not tested, like vaccine-enhanced respiratory disease, was not properly tested. In Pfizer's case, they tested in the animal model that does not get COVID disease. And in Moderna's case, they tested with irrelevant product from 2017 using completely different virus, not SARS-CoV. So this is how they fraudulently declared that this vaccine does not enhance disease, which we know now it does based on the outcomes of the vaccination. And also reproductive toxicity studies were horrible. They showed malformations of babies, statistically significantly increase in skeletal malformations and all kinds of birth defects, and also about 300% increase in loss of implantation, which means that it's preventing pregnancy from happening or being sterilizing effect on reproduction. So that's why I think these are very dangerous products. They were not properly tested, and a lot of tricks were used, both in terms of the law and contracts, and causing the global panic so that the governments would just close their eyes and do what they're told by the WHO. Yes, thank you.
Just real quick before I lose my train of thought, what she's saying is about the pandemic treaty would lower the standards. So our standards in Costa Rica are higher than the United States for human rights protections. And what they do is they do cooperative research, and they have waived the protection of human rights in ways. And I want to let it be known that the WHO was able to do it because of pandemic preparedness, which the treaty would put into place, and he was able to do regulatory flexibility, and that was able to waive inspections for good manufacturing. They still haven't had them, so our comptroller says you have to have them, and Tedros waived them. And this treaty will let that be, will make that mandatory to lower, and everybody will be harmonized. Not good.
I just want to add on to the FDA part really quickly and say that I spoke with Dr. Keith Peden at CBER at the FDA, and he informed me about a year ago that the FDA could not test these products. They were not allowed to test these products because they were proprietary. He said that. I asked them if they were looking for integration. He said no. So now we know we have in vitro and in vivo experiments that have shown absolute integration of the DNA plasmid that contaminates and adulterates the Pfizer shots into the human genome in breast cells, in ovarian cells, and now just in the past month in a colon cancer biopsy, we have integration of the Pfizer DNA into human DNA, into the genome. There is integration. It has been proven. We are going further to investigate sperm, but this must be known. These must be pulled.
It's impermissible ethically.
Thanks so much. I don't know if Dr. Martin would like to add something, because she's been really quiet the entire meeting. I know you want to take the floor also.
Sure. Hi. I'm here to talk about the qPCR, or the PCR test that was used to have people locked down and have them staying home from their jobs. So there are a lot of issues with that test that are highly technical. it's a huge house of cards, which I'd love the opportunity to elaborate more on that and explain that to you. But I'm going to go ahead and use the FDA and the WHO's own articles. So the FDA released a policy on 2/22/21, which was a new policy to evaluate the impact of the mutations of the coronavirus on the test. So one of the things that was wrong with this test from the beginning is there are several common cold coronaviruses, and they didn't pick a section of the virus that was unique to the novel coronavirus necessarily to identify using the tests. That's just one of the issues. Later on, when they realized there was mutations, which are very common in this type of virus, they acknowledged in this document that I just mentioned, which I can send you a copy of, they acknowledged that this could cause the test to be invalid. So the FDA has acknowledged that the test could be invalid in one of their own articles. The WHO in another article, which was put out on the 20th of January, 2021, also acknowledges the issue with the PCR testing and says that when the results do not correspond with the clinical presentation, we should take a new specimen retest. They also said that as the disease prevalence increases, the risk of false positive increases. So they've admitted that there is a risk of false positive. They also go on to say that PCR assays are an aid for diagnosis, and so therefore it follows that they are not a diagnostic tool. Additionally, there was a CT value, which was a cutoff for a positive or not positive. You've probably heard of CT values. Those could vary from lab to lab. There was no standard for this. But more importantly, a lot of times I'll buy a primer. A primer is the thing that's going to detect the nucleic acids in your sample, for example. So it's kind of like a template. I'll buy this primer or like a probe for PCR, and then I'll test it on a control in the lab. Like I have certain bacteria that I want to test. I'll pull those bacteria and then I'll test the primer for that certain bacteria, and I'll see if it works. So there were several primers that I bought for certain bacterial species that I've tested on other bacterial species, and they were positive. So these primers were not working. The way this was sort of rolled out, nobody was able to actually test the primers in the way that we typically test a primer in the lab. So a lot of times we'll run it on a gel, and I don't know if you've ever maybe like watched a crime show and you see the DNA ladders, you see the little bars on the gel, or you can match up these bars and see if it's working. One thing, when you run it too much, instead of a bar, you're just going to see a smear instead of the nice bars where you can match them up. That's something that you can't do. And you can't actually test to see if the primer is working. So when you get a primer, it's just a little tube that looks empty, and you reconstitute it. You have no way of knowing what was sent to you. So it's really important that we have these other methods that we use to verify that what we have in the tube is, what we think we have, what sequences are actually in there, and then is it working for what we want it to work for. So like I said, I'd love more time to go into this in detail. It's a lot of information, but basically it was a really bad foundation.
All in all, you would say it's not a valid diagnostic to declare a pandemic or a case, correct?
According to the WHO and FDA themselves, it's inadequate to or provides insufficient evidence to even diagnose somebody with something.
Real quick, yes. Adriana, I want to tell you exactly word for word what CCSS says in the document. Quote unquote, in your own documents here, quote unquote, even though the PCR test is being used to detect active infections, comma, it remains active months after no longer infectious. So you're positive. And then what they did is they used to test people for flu in Caja, and then they stopped testing people for flu in Caja, and they sent everybody over to Incencia to test them with the PCR test. They can't tell if it's flu or not. And then they said flu went away, but then he also testified flu's endemic and never goes away. It doesn't make any sense. It was flu.
This was a testimony from Daniel Salas in the previous administration.
It was
in our court case that we had in
doesn't make sense.
in here in Costa Rica. So their judicial records stemming from there. Go ahead,
Sasha.
Yeah, can I add to this about the pandemic emergency declarations? And this is true for the US and for WHO, and because that's how they want to propagate all this nonsense, essentially. with a faulty PCR, which I agree, it's not diagnostic. It's officially not diagnostic. It has never been approved as a diagnostic test. It's an aid, which is, a whole different discussion. But the pandemic emergency declarations today have no criteria. Their criteria are one case of something in the world anywhere, or a potential for one case of something in the world anywhere. And we have, according to science, we have 380 trillion viruses in each human body. And so we have 380 trillion potentials for emergency declaration that can shut down the world under the current definitions that the WHO wants to propagate. So this is absolute nonsense. It's just a power grab, centralization of power and money, huge incentives as money. As you can see, that people make billions on these products. And this is why we're so concerned, and we need to look into this further and actually force WHO to come up with a definition of a pandemic. And the definition cannot be opinion of one bureaucrat. In the US, it's the opinion of one HHS secretary who is not a doctor, he's a lawyer, that there is a potential for a viral pandemic, and that's how the country gets shut down. The same goes for WHO. Tedros's opinion is all that they require. Just opinion that there is a potential for a pandemic.
But hold on,
and so that needs to be revised.
Hold on, they made a definition in the pandemic treaty that they're asking about, and we don't like that definition. If we were to go back to common law, which this country has to harmonize to in the civil law, it says Articles 1 through 14, you have to harmonize to the common law. Common law would never, ever allow the definition that they've put into the treaty, and neither would the Syracuse principles that we've gone by. What they did is when we spoke at the pandemic treaty both times, we said you have to incorporate the Syracuse principles. Even their own ethicists, their top ethicist, Lawrence Gostin, he wrote the Syracuse principles that we are part of in Costa Rica. And he says they did not go by it. There was widespread violations of human rights because we don't have a way. And when they do the pandemic treaty, what they're going to do is they're going to get rid of Syracuse principles and supersede it. It's not going to be okay.
And we actually won a Supreme Court case here in Costa Rica in the Constitutional of the Sala Cuatro with Daniel Salas, where he failed to do the Syracuse principles.
He said he didn't need to do it.
He said he didn't need to do it or report to the Inspector General of the United Nations, and we have it in writing from the Sala Cuatro in testimony from Daniel Salas that he failed to do so according to the Syracuse principles.
And the whole reason why we're here with all these people is because nothing goes by the Syracuse principles. Everything is arbitrary, nothing is scientific, everything is disproportionate, it's not constitutional. Mike, are you trying to say something?
I think George was trying to say something here.
Okay.
There is an important legal point
Yes.
in danger with these treaties, which is under Costa Rican constitutional law, and because of the Treaty of Inter-American Human Rights, any treaty that is considered, and that's key issue, human rights related, once it is approved and becomes law, can never be eliminated from Costa Rican law. So if a treaty like this goes into effect, and for any reason it is considered to involve human rights, you will never, ever be able to get rid of it.
And they're saying
it becomes a constitutional principle.
That's why they say they want it, but everything is opposite. What they say is human rights. And if they were involved in really respecting human rights, they would have settled the disputes with us when we started filing disputes with the head internal oversight there, straight against the DG. One of their scientists would have answered one of these questions.
Instead, they referred it back to the member states.
They referred it back to you guys to deal with the fact that they won't deal with the disputes, but they say who shall settle all disputes. It's an imbalance of power.
And another thing we have in testimony from Daniel Salas from the Supreme Court is that there were no animal studies with these vaccines, and which is a valid prima facie on its face Nuremberg violation, Article 3, I believe. Yeah.
And it's in Sala 4 testimony. And then he had to call the WHO. They had to call the WHO sales department. Nobody knew if there was animal studies. But by law here, we have to have that. By the treaty, they don't.
Yep, by that treaty, they do not have to have that. That's why
he'll just waive it.
We are rejecting that treaty on its face.
And we reject the fact that they have mutual confidentiality agreements where they keep adverse effects hidden, and that we found this out through FOIAs. They keep adverse effects, copious amounts of death hidden. And CONUS is in breach of function, saying that they're not needing to regulate an investigational product And they said, well, we'll go ask CNVE about it. But CNVE said it's investigational. And then when you go to CONUS, they say it's not investigational, so we don't have to monitor the vaccine-associated respiratory disease or enhanced disease. It's over there at the registry. Then we go over to the registry. Okay, can you show us the approval? It's not here. So that means no one in Costa Rica is regulating an investigational product, meaning that 10 years moratorium was on no research. They lifted it to put this new laws on, and now the new laws are being violated. We're here to talk about breach of function, but it's being facilitated by the WHO in their weird words. It's like semantics that waives our laws. And we've got to get to the bottom of it.
Go ahead, Jancy.
So to give you an example of the type of potential malfeasance that can go on with these declarations that are open-ended, since November of last year, the U.S. has been in a Marburg and Ebola pandemic. Okay, we don't have any cases of Marburg. We don't have any cases of Ebola, but a pandemic was issued by the Attorney Secretary HHS, and he said that he deferred to the WHO in making this decision to declare this pandemic. Now, what this does is akin to a military-industrial complex buildup, where all these pharmaceutical companies then get in line because they know that they will get international and national money from all these countries to go ahead and make their medical countermeasure vaccines, even though there is not a pandemic going on. This is fraud. It's frank fraud, it's money laundering, and it's wrong. Because in order to make it appear that this is actually going on, then you have these false PCR tests that say that someone has Marburg or Ebola or COVID when they don't. And they're forced to have these products which are untested for a pandemic that doesn't actually exist.
Mm-hmm. And ubiquitous censorship of these experts to make this appear to be one thing that it's not. Go on.
Correct.
Since we have such little time left, I was wondering if maybe Adriana or Raxel have a question.
Okay, thanks so much. We have been taking notes of everything you have been sharing with us, and we're really thankful, not only for your time, but only for your concerns. Of course, for instance, my background, I'm from international affairs, so it has been really, what's the word for it in English, Jorge, muy rico, to be able, like,
very rich, very a lot of information.
Yes, exactly.
Very useful.
Exactly. Thanks so much. To hear all of this from you, I can tell not only that you're experts, but you share a real deep and profound passion for these subjects. So we really appreciate the time you have invested, not only in this conversation, but also in the past years regarding this topic. As I was saying, we have been taking notes, and we will raise them to Dr. Munive because, well, of course, Braxel and myself, we can't take any further action without her instruction. But we have taken full notes of everything. I think that Dr. Yeadon had his hand up, and then Jorge again.
Yes. Yeah. Real quick, I have to go in for 30 seconds. Yeadon's going to back me up on this. Manuve is giving the kids, the off-shelf use of the COVID-19 vaccine for respiratory. But when you go into the MEURI framework from the WHO, they're not allowed to do that off-shelf for respiratory disease. It's giving them the respiratory disease. Mike, you can back me up.
It's iatrogenic harms.
Yeah, that was my main point. That it's not just that these have not been adequately tested. That I believe their very design leads to harm. Their very design leads axiomatically to harm. And all this other information that you've heard from your interest of justice colleagues, from Sasha Latipova, from Jancy Lindsay, from Leisha Martin, and myself, I think, has provided you with the information of a crime is going on in Costa Rica, but also internationally. And we are trying our very best to bring it to a halt. So that's really all I wanted to say. And certainly, yes, children under no circumstances should have been considered at risk of this alleged pandemic disease and should never have been offered, let alone coerced to having these injections. And I certainly object to that. And I think that's happening everywhere.
Adrian, I need you to know that when we first started working with Mike Yeadon in 2021, I begged my mother and my father not to take the vaccine. They took 3 vaccines, and I have a headstone with they died 11 days apart. Please help us. They died 11 days apart. I knew that this was not safe. And then he had a heart attack, and it's over 60, and male is very, very, very at risk. Yes.
Go ahead, George.
Adriana, I just wanted to ask Adriana, do you foresee a continuation of this process, or what happens now?
Well, as I was saying before, we will have to take all this information back to Dr. Munive so that she can make a decision. I just wanted to take a few minutes because at the early beginning, where I actually don't recall who said it, but was asking us if Dr. Munive was rethinking about rejoining the tree discussion. Her stance so far is the same as it was in May. She withdrew Costa Rica from the discussions. Of course, we have been receiving the constant invitations from WHO because, well, they have to, and we have been declining those invitations.
Love you guys. We love you.
Thank you.
Respecting the instructions that Dr. Munive gave us. We haven't, whether it's the Ministry of Health or the diplomatic team back in Geneva, we haven't been participating in those discussions. Beautiful. And I don't foresee to be going back to the table as long as her instructions remain as they were set in May.
Beautiful. That's great to know. Thank you.
I just wanted to add that obviously we have a lot of information and of a very technical nature to give to you and to communicate with you and share with you, which is impossible at this point. Our idea for you to take to Dr. Munive is to perhaps create a commission or a committee or some kind of group where we can investigate this further, give you information, make recommendations so that you can have a better understanding, a more profound understanding of these issues. So it would be we would be very interested in having some kind of commission created where we can give you all this information, which is very important.
The science policy interface is what we'd like to propose. When we went to science diplomacy SDG class, they were proposing that this is the best way and that all the countries really, especially the open governments, need to do this. And we're at your service. We'd love to do it. And we would, have a system where there's no conflicts of interest, because the WHO says that they manage conflicts, but they don't say how. I can't get out of them how they manage conflict. They don't manage the conflicts. I'm telling you, they don't.
We would like to present our organization to help Costa Rica in this, in open science policy and open government. With Costa Rica is one of the 75 countries that have open government, and we would like to introduce ourselves to be able to help and be here and expand our education with you guys, and like George said, present all of this information we've been collecting over such a long time. We would really like to participate with Costa Rica as a civil society international organization on board, like Xylee said, at your service with science policy interface.
Mary Munive said she needed accurate data a few weeks ago, and she said we can't do anything without accurate data, meaning she knows. She also said that the institutions are corrupt, and I would like to say that Roberto Tejerino at the CNVE, he works for the WHO, and he's corrupt. And when he's on record saying that Costa Rica has no way to assess or address conflicts of interest, and he uses that to their advantage, and so does the WHO. They're taking advantage of us.
These are top scientists that are speaking to you, and one of the things that they've told me is how important globally in the world the Costa Rican health system is, because it's not only an example, it has been for many, many, many years, but it's also at the forefront of all of these issues. So one of the reasons that this is not important only for Costa Rica, but also for the world, is that we get this right, that we correct this, because it'll be an example for other systems in the world, and Costa Rica will be at the top of the health issues of the world. And that will mean all sorts of positive consequences for this country.
And we'll do all kinds of public diplomacy and make things right and make things right with everybody. I also want to tell Mary Manuve that the same thing happened to us, how she went to the prosecutor 3 times. No, we went to the prosecutor many more than 3 times about manslaughter and different things, and the prosecutor will not help us.
They're inactive.
And what he's doing is that Sala 4 sent us 4 times to the prosecutor for false testimony about the experimental nature, about the WHO regulations, what it means. We need help. And what's happening is everybody is inactive and allowing a crime to continue. It literally is the crime of serious undue experimentation. 9234, Article 78 and 79, and Nuremberg Code, they're being violated systematically, which actually is a crime against humanity. We've got to clean it up, make things right, and get Costa Rica's reputation back. We got to be out in the front of this because it's going to fall. Everybody's going to find out. We've got to. Costa Rica is the beacon of human rights. We have the Human Rights Court. We've got to fix this.
Jancy, go for it.
I would say Costa Rica, as Jorge was saying, also is similar to Israel in that you have a socialized medicine system where you can actually track the vaccine injured, the gene therapy vaccine injured differently than we can in the United States. So you have a unique opportunity to actually see the actual harms in your population that these genetic vaccines have caused. So please explore that. Please force the data to be released so that this data can be evaluated properly.
We did ask for the data, and we were not able to get the data.
Well,
so to try to do more analysis.
Okay.
And
I'm sorry, we only have 2 more minutes left, and I do have to move to another meeting with Deputy Minister Marin. So, Raxel, I don't know if you have any closing remarks.
Is there anything else that you need from us? And how can we continue this?
Primeramente, me gustaría agradecerle a todos los que participaron. Muchas gracias por el tiempo, muchas gracias por la información. Sin embargo, me tengo que remitir a lo que ya comentó Adriana. Vamos a llevar la información con la señora ministra para que ella pueda profundizar un poco más sobre todos los detalles y a partir de ahí tomar una decisión. En este caso, cualquier actualización la estaríamos comunicando por medio de la Unidad de Asuntos Internacionales con la colaboración de Adriana, pero nuevamente muchas gracias y creo que sería todo por el espacio del día de hoy.
Y nada más quería repetir que nos interesaría mucho la integración de algún tipo de comisión o comité en que podamos colaborar. Gracias.
Sí, claro, estos son uno de los puntos que vamos, por supuesto, a elevarle a la doctora, por supuesto.
Gracias.
Muchas gracias.
Muchísimas
gracias. Thanks so much. Have a good
Hasta luego.
afternoon.
Wonderful meeting.
Thank you very much.
Bendiciones.